Hey everyone, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going on a really fascinating, fast-paced journey today. We're starting all the way up at the highest levels of global geopolitics and bringing it right down to the micro-level impacts happening in our very own local communities. We've got a massive amount of ground to cover, from international military operations all the way to domestic security and severe weather. And as always, we're going to stick strictly to the facts from our sources, keep things completely impartial, and just decode exactly what is happening in our world right now.
So here's a quick roadmap of how this all builds today. We'll kick things off with the rapidly escalating conflict in the Middle East, and then look at how that is directly threatening global shipping. After that, we'll examine some rare diplomatic efforts happening right amidst the war in Lebanon, before pivoting to some brand new trade tariffs just slapped on Canada. Finally, we'll bring it entirely stateside to look at some intense domestic legal and security clashes, and wrap up with the severe weather that's currently battering America. It's a really complex picture, so let's just get right to it.
Starting us off at number 1, the Middle East conflict escalates.
Now, this is absolutely our most kinetic topic today, focusing on the intensifying military exchanges between the U.S. and Iran. I want you to think about this number right here, 10. That is the number of consecutive nights the U.S. military has launched strikes against Iranian targets. 10 straight nights. We're talking about a highly sustained campaign where U.S. forces are actively hitting Iranian command centers, missile launch sites, and air defense systems, really trying to seriously degrade their military capabilities.
And the real-world toll of this campaign is incredibly heavy on both sides. Tragically, on the U.S. side, the human cost has been severe. 3 service members were killed in a strike in Jordan. That includes 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan from Hawaii and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez from Texas. Another U.S. service member was killed in northern Iraq by a drone. And in retaliation, well, Iranian forces have been highly active too. They struck 2 oil tankers off the coast of Oman, targeted U.S. military assets stationed in Bahrain and Kuwait, and fired 5 drones that actually had to be intercepted by Jordanian armed forces.
Understanding the stated positions driving all this exchange is absolutely crucial. The U.S. administration is making its stance crystal clear, with President Trump stating, quote, "Every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over." So the administration's position on retaliation is absolute. Meanwhile, at the exact same time, Iranian spokespeople are publicly warning that U.S. forces will face severe consequences for their actions. So we're looking at a highly escalated standoff, with both sides signaling they are more than willing to push back hard.
Moving right along to Section 2, global shipping under threat.
So these military strikes we just talked about, they aren't happening in a vacuum. They are directly impacting the waterways that literally keep our global economy afloat. Let's look at this staggering number, 450 million. That's the number of barrels of crude oil that U.S. Central Command has had to step in and facilitate through the Strait of Hormuz just since May. To put that into perspective, that involves protecting roughly 900 commercial vessels. It really just highlights how absolutely vital and currently how vulnerable this specific region is to the entire world's energy supply chain.
Because right now, we are facing dual choke point threats on the high seas. Over in the Strait of Hormuz, commercial vessels are being directly threatened by the Iranian regime. Remember those 2 oil tankers I mentioned a minute ago that were hit? But then look over at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea. Over there, Iran's ally in Yemen, the Houthis, are threatening to implement a total naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. They are specifically trying to block 8 million barrels of Saudi oil a day that was rerouted through the Red Sea. So we're looking at 2 vital shipping lanes facing 2 massive simultaneous threats.
Bringing us to Section 3, Lebanon diplomacy amidst war.
Now, while physical conflict is definitely dominating the headlines, there are some really crucial diplomatic efforts happening concurrently behind closed doors. The U.S. administration, involving President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is actually mediating rare direct talks between Lebanon and Israel at the White House. The goals here are structured in 3 specific steps. Step 1, normalize ties between Lebanon and Israel. Step 2, disarm Hezbollah. But the really actionable part right now is Step 3, which is implementing pilot zones in southern Lebanon. Basically, the plan is for the Israeli army to pull out of these specific zones, allowing the Lebanese army to move in. It essentially transfers security responsibility over to the Lebanese government to push Hezbollah out. It's a fragile process, for sure, but a really fascinating parallel diplomatic track.
All right, on to Section 4, new tariffs on Canada.
Pivoting much closer to home now into North American trade disputes, the U.S. administration is rolling out a highly targeted economic move. This new policy zeroes in on 3 very specific Canadian export industries: cars, dairy, and alcohol. It's a precise economic strategy that goes right to the core of daily cross-border commerce.
And the sheer weight of this move is massive. We're talking about a 50% tariff. Now, the administration is citing unfair trade practices as the justification for this really heavy levy. But what makes this so interesting is the timing. These tariffs were announced right after President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the World Cup final. And while tensions have been high lately over cross-border wildfire smoke, administration officials are insisting that this 50% tariff isn't retaliation for the environmental issues at all. They say it's strictly about leveling the playing field on trade.
Which brings us to Section 5, domestic, legal, and security clashes.
Zooming all the way into our own borders, we are seeing incredibly high-stakes friction right now between the federal government and the media. It's a classic clash of priorities. On one side, you have the Department of Justice. Their goal? They want to identify national security leakers who gave the press information regarding a Qatari-gifted Air Force One. To do this, they've subpoenaed phone records from New York Times reporters and even their relatives going all the way back to January. On the flip side, the New York Times is arguing this wide net creates a severe chilling effect on journalism and the First Amendment. It's a fierce legal battle wrapped in grand jury secrecy, and it's made even more unusual by the fact that the DOJ reportedly requested a new judge for the case, rather than sticking with the previously assigned Judge Subramanian.
Meanwhile, another jarring domestic security issue unfolded right on the streets of New York, in a lone wolf attack on the Manhattan ICE office. The suspect is 43-year-old Andrew Baca, who is actually a U.S. Army veteran. According to investigators, he poured flammable liquid outside the federal building, ignited a bundle of fireworks, and then fired an airsoft rifle. When the FBI apprehended him, they recovered a truly frightening cache of weapons: axes, a machete, and knives, along with a cart carrying a sign reading "ICE off our streets." Authorities noted he made anti-government and anti-American statements, admitting he didn't care if he hurt people. Ultimately, it was a chaotic scene that resulted in 3 injuries before Federal Protective Services rapidly took him into custody.
Finally, Section 6, severe weather hits America.
You know, while geopolitical conflicts and legal battles dominate the headlines, millions of citizens are currently battling unprecedented environmental crises right in their own backyards. It has been a truly punishing summer. In the Great Lakes, 7 tornadoes touched down overnight, leaving a massive, widespread path of destruction. In Ohio, sudden violent flash floods led to a tragic mass drowning incident where 5 people lost their lives, including multiple members of a single family. And over in Beaver, Utah, a devastating river of mud and debris swept through the area, resulting in 8 fatalities. Incredibly tragically, this included Provo Fire Captain Spencer Long, his wife, and their 3 sons who were just out hiking when the water suddenly overtook them. The human cost of these violent summer storms is just staggering.
And guys, the threat is far from over. 85 million. Right now, 85 million Americans stretching all the way from the Gulf Coast up to the Northeast are waking up under the urgent threat of severe weather. Meteorologists are warning of relentless rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour, and this is on ground that is already completely saturated. So we're looking at a massive, widespread risk for severe flash flooding and high-wind thunderstorms across a huge swath of the country. So the crucial point we are left with today, after tracing this line all the way from the Middle East down to our own hometowns, is this thought-provoking question. How does a nation balance escalating global conflicts while managing intense domestic security and environmental crises at home? It's an incredible burden, balancing the macro and the micro, and it is absolutely a developing story we're going to continue to monitor closely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe out there, keep your curiosity sharp, and I'll see you next time.